Hello and welcome to the Legal Edition. Our show topic today is the common good nation, a nation defined by agreement. It is an international movement focused on creating and implementing positive social change for people, planet, for good. Our guest is Dr. Terry Mollner. He's the author of several books devoted to promoting common good. His most recent is The Common Good Nation. For decades, he has been injecting the common good philosophy into business models, boardrooms, and everyday life. Now that focus turns to governance by agreement of people, not agreement of sovereign nations. Dr. Mollner is the co-founder of the Calvert Social Investment Funds, a pioneer in socially responsible investments. He is also an active board member of Ben & Jerry's and is responsible for successfully negotiating its ongoing contractual social mission with Unilever. Let's welcome Dr. Terry Mollner. Welcome, Terry.
Thank you, Mary Kay.
Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Now, this agreement nation, walk us through this. What is it?
Well, we know nations now as defined by geography. The United States, Canada, Mexico. It's defined by geography. A nation defined by agreement is a nation just that. It's a group of people, of like-thinking people, getting together and agreeing to create a new organization that's about the business of solving all of their problems. It's not like the Sierra Club, which is dealing with one issue, like the environment. No, it's about the business of dealing with all the needs of the people who become members, just like a nation does. The difference is that it's not in conflict with the geographic nation. In fact, it's in full cahoots with it. The geographic nation will view it as a free research and development program, because anything that this group comes up with that makes sense, they'll put it into law in the geographic nation. Or if they think it's best left in the private sector, they'll provide tax incentives or other things to be able to encourage it. So it's not in conflict with the geographic nation. It's really the next stage of maturity of people organizing themselves to self-govern their own lives.
Now let's talk about that next stage of maturity. Walk us through that one as well.
Okay. Why should I have to wait for Paul Ryan on the right and Bernie Sanders on the left to reach an agreement, a majority agreement for something sensible to happen? Why don't I get together with like-minded people? The only thing that agreement nations will deal with is things that are not being done well enough by the geographic nation or at all. So they'll only be on the cutting edge. We're not going to deal with sewage systems, electrical companies. All those things are doing quite well. But if we want to get a single-payer healthcare system, maybe there's a way for us in the private sector to get together with the mutual insurance companies, which are cooperatives, and maybe find a way to pilot the beginning of something like that in the private sector maybe. Maybe that's possible. Who knows? But the point is, people anywhere in the world can join or leave an agreement nation willy-nilly. If I want to move from being a member of the United States to being a citizen of France, there's a big fol-de-rol to go about trying to do that.
Right.
But an agreement nation, I can, at any moment, join or leave it. Now, the other important thing about agreement nations, everyone's going to start them. The Tea Party will start theirs, the Catholics will start theirs, the Baptists will start theirs. Great. Let's let 1,000 agreement nations emerge. Because it's so easy to join or leave one at any time, people will gravitate toward the one that is really at the cutting edge of the maturation of the human species and is getting things done for their members.
So in other words, by getting things done, even those that join groups that really aren't really in the mainstream of most people, they will leave those groups, in your opinion, they will leave those goods for something that is common good?
No, they'll stay members of the Sierra Club or members of any other nonprofit. Nothing changes. It's just an addition.
I see.
A common good nation is, a common good nation is the name of the nation that I want to start. And I'll tell you about the worldview of it in a minute. But any agreement nation is simply a nonprofit, tax-exempt organization that's it's got an educational purpose, and that is to find a way to do things that are not being done by the geographic nations yet, that we want to see done. That's all it is.
Now, for example, let's take the Paris Climate Agreement. A number of nations belong to the Paris Climate Agreement. The United States was in the forefront of that. We just left.
Right.
So now we're not in agreement with the total body of those who want to mature to a higher level and do good for the planet. Okay, so what would you say to those people that want us to do something with regard to the Paris Climate Agreement and are not in agreement with the United States as a geographic sovereign entity? How do we get involved with like what Europe is doing and some of those others?
I firmly believe, Mary Kay, that the major changes and improvements in society are going to mainly happen in the private sector in the future. Why? The private sector, anything you launch in a for-profit or non-profit organization can easily be sustained. If you're doing something in the political world of our democracy here, it's always a political football. And one guy gets in and it's okay, another guy gets in, it's not okay. If you do something in the for-profit or non-profit world of the private sector, you can sustain it, and nobody can stop you from doing it. The wonderful thing when we started socially responsible investing way back in the early 1980s, everybody said we were crazy. But they all looked at us, everybody in the business community says, the market's going to teach you how crazy you are. I don't have to do anything. I just ignore you.
And isn't that a $12 or $15 billion business now? Calvert Social Fund?
Yes, the Calvert funds are now $12 billion. We're the largest family of socially responsible mutual funds. There's over 400 socially responsible mutual funds, and it's all going mainstream. BlackRock, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs all have impact investment programs. Impact investing is the new name for socially responsible investing. So they all have it now. Why? The millennials are going to inherit $40 trillion. They don't want the children of the people that they have as clients right now to take the money away from them. So they want to provide them a response to their concerns, because the millennials are totally devoted to the environment, and they're totally devoted to lots of other social issues. So what was absolutely thought to be ludicrous in 1982 when we launched Calvert is now going fully mainstream. That's because it was a step of maturity in the right direction. And I got to do one shout out here. All those grade school teachers that taught the children the importance of the environment, thank you. They were the people that changed society, those grade school teachers. And so now it's going mainstream on Wall Street, all because of those grade school teachers. So we should really appreciate them.
So I guess what you're saying is we can't wait for the government to do it, because they're going to be taking us in the wrong direction. You can never get anybody to agree.
No, the government ultimately usually takes us in the right direction, okay? I mean, just stop and think what life was like 2,000 years ago and what it's like now. You know, we have electricity, we're putting satellites in the air and all that kind of a thing. You know, we will figure it out eventually.
But we don't have time right now with the climate.
But let me go back to your earlier question. There's a wonderful guy named Tom Chi, I think is his name, that I just spoke to this weekend. He is working with people, he's a successful Silicon Valley guy. He's working with people to have robots plant trees. He's going to plant millions of trees, which is going to suck the CO2 out of the air and deal with the climate issue that way. It's a private sector activity of what he's doing. You know, he's doing as a nonprofit. People are donating money. He's going to go plant trees. We know that, you know, trees and grass, they suck into CO2.
Right.
There's going to be lots of things like this that are going to come along long before the government gets around to doing a good job, because the political football will go back and forth, and it takes a lot of time to grow up.
So what you're saying is it's the private sector that's going to be saving our planet, pretty much.
I think so, yes.
And the common good nation fits right into that.
That's right. Now let me tell you what the basic worldview is of the common good nation, which is the nation by agreement that I'm launching. There's 3 dimensions to the skill of self-consciousness. Most of us on the planet today are only using the first 2. The first one is the recognition of differences. Dogs and cats and lions, tigers and bears recognize differences. The second one is we've created a human language, which creates the illusion of time and space, a whole bunch of separate parts. The universe is an indivisible whole. But in order to create a human language, you got to break the universe up into separate parts. So you give a word to each of them. You know, cup, table. Can't do that if we're just thinking about the universe as one thing. We can only do that if we make believe that it's separate parts. So a human language is a mutually agreed upon illusion tool. It's a mutual illusion tool. It's not like a hammer or a screwdriver. It's a mutual agreed upon illusion that allows us to create a language. That language allows us to also create a word for yesterday and a word for tomorrow. That allows us to be self-conscious, to know what we're doing while we're doing it, and to think about the past come up with a plan in the present, and then execute it consistently in the future. That's called self-consciousness, all right? So the common good nation that I'm creating is based upon a recognition of the third dimension of self-consciousness.
And what is that?
Which is the recognition of the oneness of nature. Right now, everybody is usually walking around acting like they're only their body. They're not. The body's going to die. The universe is not going to die. The universe is an indivisible whole. Mm-hmm. And when that is understood, people will then say, whoa, then you mean it's natural for me to give priority to my true self-interest, which is the common good of the universe, which has been called morality through all of history? Yes. Wise people throughout history have figured out that it's natural to mature to where you freely choose to give priority to the common good.
So is what you're saying, those that are self-centered and are only here for themselves in the here and now, they haven't matured to the level to see the bigger picture that we're all in this together?
That's right.
In other words, if you pollute over here, it's like it's everyone's problem. It's not just the people that are living in that area. It's everyone's problem that's living in the world, because eventually that pollution is going to reach.
That's right. The universe is one indivisible whole in the exact same way that we think of our body as an indivisible whole. All right? And so that means that my true self-interest is what's best for the good of all. That's been called love. When you fall in love with somebody, you don't say, oh, I'm in love with you on Tuesdays. No, no, no. You say, I'm in love with you all time, all space. That wonderful feeling of love is the feeling of the oneness of nature. Mm-hmm. Now, most people end up in trouble in their marriages because they don't, after the infatuation rolls out, they forget how to stay as a skill in that experience of love as the container of everything they're doing. Mm-hmm. That's because they haven't matured where they know that skill. Right?
I see.
So let's just quickly go through the stages of maturity.
Yes, please. Let's get through that.
Okay. The 7 stages of maturity, and there's not an 8th, there's only 7. It's like the skill of like riding a bicycle. There's a certain number of smaller skills. You learn them, you know how to ride a bicycle. It's the same thing here. Baby, toddler, child, teen, adult, elder, and mature elder. Child comes into the world. The child does not have the skill of language or self-consciousness. So the child's experience is everything is me. It doesn't have the ability to break the world up into parts and say I'm an American. At the toddler stage, it gets differences. Mommy, no mommy. Milk, no milk. So now it gets the first dimension of self-conscious recognition of differences. Mm-hmm. At the child stage, the child learns a language. Now it gets the second dimension of self-consciousness, which is the mutually agreed upon illusion of separate parts as a tool. So it can now become self-conscious. The next stage is the teen stage. The brain, we now know, is not developed to be able to have people fully get individual freedom until the teen years. And so up until then, they're living within the multiple choice questions that you and I put out for them. Mm-hmm. You say you want chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry ice cream, and they say chocolate. If they're a teenager, they say, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about getting a car.
Right. So they always, when they reach the teenage level, they want to extend their own maturity and say, I want to do this or I don't want to do that. So they start expressing themselves.
That's right. But recognize, at each stage of maturity, there's a different highest priority. The toddler stage, it was differences. At the child stage, it was wants, because now I'm over here. Mm-hmm. Language says I'm over here. The candy's over there. So the kids are want machines. At the teenage stage, the highest priority becomes individual freedom.
Right.
So they like to put on different clothes that nobody else has put on before, to shout to the world, I'm free to do whatever I damn well please. The next stage of maturity is the adult stage. And that's what the person realizes. The most important free choice is my fundamental worldview.
But aren't we a lot of people stuck at that level?
No. Most people are stuck at the teenage stage.
Really?
Because most people have not sat down and said, well, wait a minute, I'm just, going to church on Sundays or going to the mosque on Sundays to do whatever my parents did. I haven't sat down and said, what are the different possible fundamental worldviews, and chosen one. That's the adult stage. If you haven't sat down and thought it through and made a clear choice, okay, I'm going to stay with Catholicism, I'm going to stay with Muslim, I'm going to stay with science. If you haven't thought it through and made a clear choice so that you're committed to that, you haven't done the adult stage. Most Americans, when I interview audiences, when I walk them through all this, most hands go up, say they admit they're at the teenage stage.
Really?
Yeah. Because individual freedom, this is America.
Right.
We are, everything is individual freedom, and we're drunk on it.
Also, too, when you're stuck at the teenage level, isn't it a more me, and not more I care about the world?
Yes, it can be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Depends on what parenting you got.
Right.
Which becomes important. But let me just go on. After the adult stage is the elder stage. That's when you get the universe is one indivisible whole. Mm-hmm. You get the third dimension of consciousness.
We're all in this together.
We're all in this together. But you get it in words. You get it in words. It's your now number one belief. You've changed your beliefs many times, and now this is, and you're totally committed to this. But it's all in words. And so that's the point at which you discover the relationship between words and oneness. That's where you discover words are a mutually agreed upon illusion tool. So then at the seventh stage of maturity, you say, okay, I got to give priority to something that is not a separate part, because separate parts aren't real. There's only one thing that you can give priority to that is not a separate part. That's experience. The experience that you and I have right now, there's no borders to it. There's no edge. We are experiencing the universe right now. There's no edge to it. Words are mutually agreed upon illusions. There's 6,000 languages. It's a means
of communication. That's all it is.
Words are for communication, communion and self-consciousness, all right? The interesting thing about the seventh stage of maturity of the skill of self-consciousness, you can only know you've gotten it with another human being by sitting, looking them in the eyes, and coming to know the experience of oneness as your priority and every words as second priority. Now, the reason you can only do it with another person, because you want to know it as a self-conscious experience. You can only have a self-conscious experience with language present, because it's what allows you to be self-conscious.
Okay. Now, let's fit this in with the common good nation and eldering and how this whole hierarchy fits in.
Okay, so we now want to build a nation defined by agreement based on this worldview. That's what's about to happen, okay? Okay. The first thing we have to do is correct one huge problem we have with our current democracy. Over 100 million people went to the polls and voted for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. Nobody knew both of them. That's a ridiculous idea. At least on the face of it, that's a ridiculous. I should choose a leader and I don't really know either one of them? That's a ridiculous idea. So in common good nation, no leaders will be chosen other than in a group of 100 or less people. That's part of the design. So a group of people get together and decide they're going to be a community in the common good nation. This is a group of people get together, their friends who share this worldview and do this. So if 10 or more people do this, they can constitute a community. The two things they need to do is to elect a board of facilitators, not directors, facilitators. Because the highest priority in the common good nation is individual freedom. You don't have to do anything. But what a lot of libertarians don't understand is the other side of the coin of individual freedom is making and keeping agreements. You can't avoid making and keeping agreements as a human being with the skill of self-consciousness. So anybody's free to do whatever they want to do in the common good nation. You can sign up on the internet and do nothing. Or you can end up getting a group of friends together and create a community. The community will elect a board of facilitators. The job of the board of facilitators is not to tell people what to do as a paternalistic system. The board of facilitators say, what do you want to do? Let's figure out what we want to do. Oh, you want us to do an initiation for our teenagers. Okay, here we're going to come up with a whole bunch of ideas. What do you think? Is this the one you like best? Great. Okay, now let's go do it. And those people want to do it, we'll do it. Those people don't want to do it, won't do it. They can only facilitate consensual kinds of decisions in their community.
So in essence, you're taking the boardroom and you're bringing the boardroom philosophy into society. Isn't that what you're saying?
Definitely not. I'm on the board of Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream, as you know. I'm on the board of other companies. We make decisions and then they get implemented through the organization. That's a paternalistic system. This is the opposite of traditional board or director systems. The board of facilitators can only facilitate things that the community clearly reveals that it wants to do and how it wants to do it. If nobody signs up for a project they come up with, then nobody signs up. That's the end of it.
So would you equate the public with the shareholders, people what they want to do? How would you equate it in other terminology?
Let's just describe the other pieces. So the board of facilitators has the second greatest power. No, they have the third greatest power. There's also a board of elders, which is chosen by the community. Why do we want to have a board of elders? Every group in common good nation has a board of elders. Why? The most important thing for us to do with our children and with each other is to master the skills, the 7 skills of the stages of maturity of the skill of self-consciousness. That's by far the most important thing. If everybody at the age of 20 knew that, there'd be no more wars, there'd be no more weapons, there'd be no more of the stuff that we don't want. Because people at the highest stage of maturity really know they are the universe and really do effortlessly, naturally, and freely give priority to the common good.
But a lot of people don't nurture their children to reach that higher level.
Most of us, when our trainers get to teenagers, we're hoping that they'll let us talk to them again.
Yes.
That happens a lot in our society and we also think our teenagers are supposed to be rebelling. They're not supposed to be rebelling. They're supposed to be being eldered further.
So, but I guess what I'm trying to get at, most people don't reach the elderly or maturity. Some can by the age of 20, according to your analysis.
No,
but not everybody
biologically
can.
They can achieve it by 20.
But not everybody receives it ever.
Right.
Some people may never get to that. So they can't experience, understand how, if you pollute, you're going to hurt the world. They're more concerned about maybe their bottom line or how much money they're going to make. They're not really concerned about the effect on anyone else because they haven't ever reached that level of maturity.
That's right. And so our parenting is lacking. The job of parents in Common Good Nation, the highest priority is going to be to elder your children up the stages of maturity. I'm a part of another community of friends, and we do initiations for our teenagers. It takes a whole weekend. The teenagers love it. And what we mainly get them to know is, yes, you have individual freedom. The other side of the coin of that is you now have responsibility.
Mm-hmm. So, but the American society hasn't really been doing that. Has international societies, in your opinion, I know that you've done work out in India, and they're very clan-oriented. Have you seen a lot of that eldering where there's, an elevation of this level?
Last 2 years of Mahatma Gandhi's life, he went back to the villages and he began to organize a new thing called people's committees. And Nehru and everybody thought he had lost his cookies. Why would he, the most powerful in India, go back to villages to try to pilot a new thing? What he realized was that it was his lack of understanding of all of what I'm talking to you about that had caused the division. He wasn't able to get Jinnah to agree to create one nation, and they created Pakistan and India. And he blamed himself for that. And so what he wanted to do was to create a new form of democracy. He had created the Congress I Party, which is still the most powerful party in India. And he realized that was a mistake. He should never have created a party in a competing political system because competition is not the fundamental process in nature.
It's the cooperation.
Cooperation is the fundamental process in nation. And therefore, so he went back and he organized people's committees. And people's committees were based upon the ancient panchayat eldering system of tribes. So it didn't rapidly then. So he was piloted then. He then got assassinated. Jayaprakash Narayan, who used to be the head of the Socialist Party, left at the same time Gandhi was assassinated and went to Vinobaba's village, and he meditated for many years, and he realized what Gandhi was doing was on the right track. He came out and he started to create people's committees all over India. They rapidly ended up in villages all over India because it was in our society, it would be the most elder person from the for-profits and the non-profits sitting in a circle to deal with an issue with no deadline of time. They were going to talk about the issue until they could come to a consensus of more than 70% on a proposal. Unlike
our Congress that wants to make a decision on health care and then just go on break, just get that decision done. You're saying they take the time to make sure they get it right.
The priority in our last election was the horse race between the two candidates. Nicholas Kristof in the New York Times quoted a piece of research. Less than 5 hours was spent talking about issues on all the television stations together. Why? Because people will switch the channel. They want to hear about the fight about the emails or, Donald Trump doing something horrible to women. That sells commercials. Talking about the breakdown of what the health system could be and what it couldn't be and whether that loses the viewer. So less than 5 hours. So the purpose of the People's Committees was to have the priority be the issues. And so they have the most respected people in the community carry on conversations like a woman's right to an abortion could be a possible issue. So they talk about it in March. The next March, they talk about it again. They don't talk about it again until the next March. Everybody organizes their arguments. The next March comes and the whole thing, and it's on television, it's on radio. Everybody's in the conversation, working toward coming up with an agreement that the entire community could end up with a 70% vote on, with no deadline. Now, you can't run for office in that community anymore if you don't support the resolutions that receive 70% vote. So one of the things that the Common Good Nation that I'm starting is going to be doing is creating people's committees in towns and states all over the United States.
Yeah. Now, in our last couple of minutes, let's walk through how that will work. And I know I read your book, and you said you can avert wars, famines, poverty.
Well, that's eventually, of course.
Of course, down the road.
No, the The other project we're going to launch is something that I've just gotten all the legal work done. It's called Trust for All Children. It's a way to set in motion a process that will tap the profits of corporations in the private sector to distribute money to poor people all over the world. And there's also a way for parents to be able to create a trust fund very easily for their child at birth, where it grows without taxation. So these kinds of things in the private sector are possible. Mm-hmm. So the main thing that we want to do is simply provide an opportunity for those people who share this worldview to organize into groups of friends, wherever they are, mm-hmm. into their community. Their community will elect representatives to an association, but there'll never be more than 50, because we can never have a group larger than 100 people to choose their leaders. And so there'll be as many associations and associations of associations as necessary based on how many people join. So there'll be no charge. There'll be a $50 fee, annual fee, just to know people are in or out. But there'll be no taxation. And let's just see what happens.
So in other words, if I want to join a group of folks who are interested in climate change, I can become an activist in that group of those 50 or 100 people, and I'm not defined by the geographic borders or whether my state or my country wants to be involved in that initiative.
That's right.
And that's how you get things done.
Each community will decide what they want to do as a community and what they want to do as individuals. So the individuals might be involved with all kinds of things like they currently are. But the community might decide, hey, we want to play a role in this environmental issue. Mm-hmm. So how do we do that and figure out how they'll play a role? The associations could figure out how to play a role. The associations of 50 mm-hmm. communities. Mm-hmm. The associations of associations can figure out how to play a role. The most important thing to understand is the highest power is with the individual. The second power is with the elder body of the local community. The third power is with the local community's board of facilitators. The fourth power is with the association. Nobody can tell anybody what to do. But in our Constitution, there's a clear statement that if there's disagreements, how it gets resolved through a cooperative process. If you can't solve it there, fine, you can go to the courts in the geographic nation. But everybody's going to want to solve it through a cooperative process, which we've used in our community of friends for 34 years.
Well, it sounds fascinating, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we'll be talking about this from time to come.
Good.
Thank you so much, Sari.
You're very welcome.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
I want to thank our guest, Dr. Terry Mollner, for sharing his insights on issues of the common good nation. I also want to thank you, our viewers, for tuning in. For more information on today's topic and our guest, visit the Legal Edition online at thelegaledition.com. As always, this information is for general educational purposes only. It is not to be construed or relied upon as legal, business, or professional advice. And please consult a qualified practitioner as to your legal, business, or professional needs. And don't forget, read our blog, subscribe online, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.